Kevin Chisholm. Kevin was one of 5 children who grew up in a small town near Albany, New York. He's a professional engineer who has been a resident of Virginia for 31 years. He is best described as fiscally conservative progressive, according to your words. He is consulted on transportation, energy, environment, and disaster response. Between 2003 and 2010, he served as chief energy official for the 35 schools in Arlington, Virginia. He's been active as a county commissioner in churches and for organizations serving the needs of the less fortunate. The father of 2 girls nearing college age, Kevin is a candidate for the 10th District. Welcome, Kevin.
Hi, good morning. Thanks. Afternoon, yes, thank you. It does. Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. And it's interesting. If I talked with everyone in this room enough, I'd probably find there were people that we each knew in common. I've lived in Virginia that long and know many people and enjoy those associations. I've prepared to talk about a few different things, but I'll gauge the audience's responses and see if I see people nodding off. Oh no, that's relaxing, just part of the discussion, but might move on to something different. Or I'd like to talk about who I am, actually, where I'm from. We all have to come from somewhere, and it plays such an important part of who we are. The communities that we're from, and the people that we enjoyed knowing as we were growing up, and I'm probably not uncommon in that I think that where I'm from and the school I attended when I was a student, before college, was almost magical, an almost magical place. And it was a little town called Voorheesville, New York, and a village of about 5,000 people. I lived about a mile outside the village. And sometimes I'm reminded of a book that was being written by the author that wrote all those kids' books. Now I'm forgetting his name. But it was, sorry? No, the book it ended up being called The Differendorfer School. And Dr. Seuss, thank you. Dr. Seuss. Yes. Well, we all like his books. I love to read them to others, to kids, and already through that phase of my life where my children are adults. But The Differendorfer School was a book that he was writing before he died, and he never finished it. But some folks took that book and they finished it for him, and it was called The Differendorfer School. The Differendorfer School was the school where things were almost haphazard, but they got done well in spite of the haphazard nature of things. And it reminded me of the school I went to. Really, the best schools, just like the best communities, are when people get along and they all share a common interest in that the community is a healthy place to live and everyone's happy there. And the school I went to had really great teachers, of course, and being of that age, I focused on sports. I probably wasn't the best student when I was young. I got better as school years went by, and I remember in second grade, I was just a jittery kid, probably a candidate for some kind of drug today they would give kids. And I took a social studies class, actually, did I say seventh grade. And the teacher asked me to write an article about what it was like to live in the 1880s. And gosh, and then I realized, and I was on my way to school and I hadn't written it, that I knew better write something up quick. So I'm on the school bus, and the bus is like jumping up and down, and got a piece of paper, and I write to the, I write that I write about what it's like to be on a stagecoach. And I explained to the teacher, well, the reason this isn't very easy to read is because I'm jumping up and down. Is that, you know, the stagecoach is moving all the time. and I was so pleased that she actually read it to the class, because I think she was humored by it. And I was at first thinking, oh, I'm in trouble now, but she enjoyed that. She enjoyed that very much. I never really wasn't much of a reader. Not until my college years did I ever read a full book. But I faked it, just like many students do. And I didn't use Cliff Notes. I used more my imagination. I would read, I'd scan the book and I'd read it, and read parts of it and kind of get the gist of it. And I'd talk to people. I'd talk to my parents, who were prolific readers, great readers, all the best novels and literature there was. They were great. And so one day I had to write a book report, and decided to write one where I was comparing the works of Ernest Hemingway with John Steinbeck. Well, I scanned a bunch of different books, talked to my parents for hours, and I ended up writing a book report comparing the two authors, and got good grades on it, actually. I did very well with it. Now, I'm not suggesting that people should cheat and not do the work. And years later, I've read many of their works, actually. I didn't really start reading until college. And I've probably read 15 of Steinbeck's books and 3 or 4 of Hemingway's. He's a little heavy, actually, kind of. You get a little depressed when you think of his life. But I enjoyed them very much. And I enjoyed the town I lived in very much. And the town are made of just, you know, people of all walks, of all kinds. And I'm just going to talk about a couple of the people that were from my town. I lived on a rural street. It was called Swift Road. Things weren't all that fast on Swift Road, I have to tell you. It was pretty rural. There was a lot of farming nearby. It was great to live in a community like that, really. But there was a gentleman that lived on the street. His name was Kit Carson. Kit Carson he was an older man. I think his wife decided to get rid of him, divorced him some years earlier. He was too much trouble. And I think he liked to drink. He liked to drink a lot, actually. And that's not really funny, but it was to me, I guess, well, so at some point in time, the police found that he was drinking on the road. This was before drinking was like considered a crime of mass destruction. And he had probably been caught driving so many times, it took his license away. Well, Kit Carson wasn't going to let that stop him. So he ended up, he had a tractor. So he used the tractor instead. And he still got in trouble with the tractor. He'd do his drinking in tractor and hit the local bar. There was a checkered flag. It was a restaurant down the street, and where people like to frequent, and a friendly place, actually, in many ways. And but I knew he still had issues with it when one day, early Sunday morning, we noticed that his tractor was sideways in the ditch in front of our house. So he couldn't even handle the tractor, apparently. And one day, and this is actually a true story, Kit Carson, I'm walking by his house, and I hear a voice as I'm walking by. It's a plea. He had actually fallen into his well in the property. And so, I made sure he got out of there and all that, but he was, to this day, I think fondly of him, because he was always friendly. But when I one day met his wife, I could tell she was happy to not have to deal with Kit Carson. He was quite an eccentric, very eccentric. I met so many people. I worked at a country club as a caddy, and had the opportunity to meet, actually, it was a country club that was actually exclusive, and not so true today. It was, you had to be Jewish to be in the country club. And met just so many wonderful people, including a local architect who helped to kind of stimulate me to become an engineer later. He was, anyone's from that area, his name was Henry Blattner. And just a great architect, very respected in the Albany, New York area. Well, I moved here in 1981, and those years really formed who I am. I worked on a farm as a child. I had a paper route. The importance of work is just so important today, always will be. It doesn't mean there's not much importance or benefit in working your fingers to the bone, but there is importance in working hard, in working towards a goal that helps you and others. And I've learned that, and very glad. I'll never forget it. To this day, I always do work, whether it's projects around my house or it's the consulting work I do as an engineer. I know how important it is, and it forms character. It makes us who we are, it makes us strong. Whatever that commitment is to something that benefits us and others. And it's best when it does both. It really kind of has to do both. Otherwise, it's not as magical as it can be. And now I can talk about politics a little bit, but I'm not sure people really want to hear about politics. I have two daughters, okay? I have two daughters. I'm just so pleased to be a father of two daughters. And the one's still just entered college last year, and the other one graduated recently. And she is as independent, incredibly independent. And I think that I'm not sure that might be more true for fathers than for mothers. I'm not sure. But either way, you know, I've learned to respect the independence and live her life. And she lives in, actually, she lives in Providence, Rhode Island now. And doing very well. Works at a hospital for psychiatric hospital, actually, and loves science. So I'm very glad about that. I really am a lover of science. And being a lover of science, I want to see rational thought become a way in which we arrive at smart decisions as a public, as a legislative body, as citizens. Sometimes when something's really obvious and it's logical, it's you don't have to talk about it very much. People know about it. They know that that the truth never changes. It's always the truth always persists, and so I'm mindful of that. I think of the years when, like Jimmy Carter was president, and if someone's blood pressure just jumped up, let me know. But I like Jimmy Carter, actually. He was honest, and there were several presidents who were scientists or engineers. Not many of them. It was Thomas Jefferson. One of probably the least popular one was Calvin Coolidge. He was a mining engineer. Actually, most people don't know that. But bad timing, he got caught with the Great Depression, and people didn't think he reacted to it quickly enough, and FDR came in. I think make things better and improve things. Saw that people were employed, even if they didn't make a lot of money, that they were doing something useful, they felt positive about their lives. We may end up hitting that point again in our culture. We could end up having, even not as severe as that was, but who knows? But where unemployment goes up and we have to try to make people employed and feeling like they're doing something useful with their time at that age, you know, when they're in working ages. Being employed is an important, it's the most important thing a political person needs to think about, is that people that are in those working ages in their 20s and 50s to 50s, that they need to be gainfully useful to society. And it's not a matter of being paid a bunch of money. It's a matter of just feeling useful and being able to earn their keep and to be able to pay for some dignity in their lives and independence in their lives. And I wouldn't be against in the future, if need be, a stimulus package of some kind, some way to employ more people. And I have different ideas on that, and be happy to share those with you. But and you do too, I'm sure. So that's the magic, or the lack of magic, of legislative leadership. Is it's best when those ideas kind of come from the group and not from an individual, that they be collectively arrived at from the men and women in that social group. And so sometimes I try not to get too specific, realizing that, yeah, I've got my ideas, but I want to hear others. Now, I could talk on more about different things. I've been doing this enough now that even though I'm an engineer and kind of introverted, I can give you the gift of gab, but I don't think people always want that. Maybe there might be some questions of people here that I'd be happy to answer.
Do we have any questions?
I'm interested in knowing.
Wait a minute.
There's a couple of your
Wait a minute.
Well, I have, that's right, I'm sorry.
What the show is on.
Thanks, John. I'm interested in hearing a couple of your ideas about getting people employed. You said you have ideas, but just what are one or two of your ideas for getting more people employed?
Well, thank you for the question, and I'm all ears to hear other people have ideas.
Good.
For my people too, but yes, I'll use this.
Okay. The United States has a huge rail system throughout the United States. It could be used much more than it is now, just as it is, so even without building new rail. I give you an example. There's rail north-south that goes through Berryville, Virginia. Comes from the, it's a private freight rail company's line, and it comes from the north and heads through Berryville and heads down towards southern parts of Virginia. And there's no passenger rail there at all. You can use that kind of freight rail line for freight and passenger, and absolutely no reason it can't be done. And you'd employ many people in the improvements to the line to make it a better route for passengers. Passengers like to get from one place to another, a little more time sensitive than freight. Freight can sometimes spend days getting places. Well, passengers like to get there within a reasonable amount of time. And actually, it's right now, sometimes freight gets places quicker than passengers can. So we need to improve that. So I see that in the United States we can employ hundreds of thousands of people, either by funding these freight rail companies through federal money to make improvements to these lines. That would be a private sector answer, or if the freight rail companies were to allow the federal government to step in with its own expertise and actually do that. The former probably is the one that works the best because they know their technology and they know. But to fund those, and those jobs, those companies could be told we're going to, they could be give some direction in terms of who does that work. But it will probably be largely private sector.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
Kevin, what would be your answer to this problem with the sequestration, I can pronounce that, coming up?
Okay, well, thank you. To be really honest, I'm glad that the group of people in Congress that got together and decided that they needed to make some things happen in terms of the budget and in terms of spending, including military spending, that we had to face that day. And because if that had not happened, they often just are pretty bad at making difficult decisions. And I think some of the more difficult decisions are in the years ahead. I think many of them are budget related. Sometimes moving our emphasis and our resources from one thing to another, or just reducing that spending and reducing taxes and allowing other people to pay less in taxes and doing so. I'm glad they're having the discussion. And sadly enough, I listened to the presidential debates, and I listened to even some of the more progressive discussions on it don't happen at the highest level. They're not. They seem to be happening more between Kane and Allen, and in congressional discussions like you have here in this district. I mean, you've got three good people out here, Kristen Cabral, Mr. Wolf, and I, who are trying to face these issues. And there's a few weeks left before the election, and I hope that there'll be more discussions on that. I know military pretty well. We want a strong military. But if we're hopefully, I believe that we should be heading towards more peaceful times, that we can reduce some of our cost of military. I've seen, I've been to Air Force bases, Air National Guard bases, Navy bases, and I've seen a lot of equipment just sitting there doing nothing. And I believe we should maintain what we need. And we should do really a reasonable evaluation of what our military needs for the years ahead are. There really is not a big bad army after us right now. And that's what drives a big military, actually.
Do we have any other questions?
Gee, why do I have to stand up? I think I'll sit down. I'm interested in medical care. One of the reasons I'm interested in it because I'm very old.
80 is not that old.
80 is not that old. Yes.
He looks to be 21.
Yeah, I wish. Anyway, my question with regards to that is the doc fixed? I tried to make an appointment here recently, and they're just shutting them down. If you're on Medicare, you can either pull out your green stuff or move on down the road. And this 27% cut in the Medicare payoff for the physician I finally see is really, really important. I don't know how in the world you can haul off and cut a doctor's fee 27%. Good heavens.
Okay, I'm going to need to get to know more about that. I wasn't aware of that. 27% less to the doctor themselves. Yeah. That's good to know. Thank you.
How about anyone